I'm Nathan Ponchard, this is Chasing Cars, and this is a 2022 Ford Mustang GT Fastback. When I say 2022, I mean it's still on sale in 2022. There is an MY22 model coming in the second quarter of this year. However, it is mainly about a California special, and it does change some of the colours. One of which is this colour here called Yellow Peel, which is on an MY21.5 Mustang, which is still on sale in 2022. This colour here will disappear along with Twister Orange, two blues and a silver, and will be replaced by mysterious purple and eruption green. So this looks sort of eruption-esque to me, but this colour is quite cool. This Yellow Peel is a $650 option, joined by over-the-top stripes, which are also $650. This Mustang has a rear spoiler that's $750, and it has two other options: $3,000 worth of Recaro seats and $2,750 worth of Magna-Ride suspension, which is adaptive magnetic dampers, which do make a difference to the way the Mustang drives. So this piece of American machinery, as you see here, is $74,990. Now, I actually ran a Mustang in this current generation for almost a year as my long-termer in 2017, 2018. So I know the car really well. It wasn't the update though, and I think a lot of the stuff that Ford did to this car in 2018 has made a big difference to how much more sophisticated the current generation Mustang is. And let's just say, it's way more sophisticated than the previous one. Even the original 2015 model was better than that live axle old thing, although it did look good and have character. The main change at the front here is that it is lower. So I think that might have even been done for pedestrian protection, but it does do a whole bunch of other things as well. It improves the vision from the driver's seat quite measurably because you no longer have the big lump in the middle, although kind of miss the lump. Let us know what you think. It's very smooth, but I just feel like the lump adds a bit of character to it. It also changed all these lights here. They're now LED. They're much more sophisticated looking than before. The grille is generally the same, and as are the alloys on the car. And this Mustang is also not a small car. It's nearly 4.8 meters long, but I think it still looks fantastic. It's the perfect example of how to take a retro look and make it become modern. Personally, I wouldn't put the stripes on my Mustang, and I wouldn't put a spoiler on the back of it either. I feel like the shape of it does all the talking, especially in a yellow as fluoro as this. So let us know what you think. I do love the 5.0 badge here because we know that that implies that what's under here is pretty muscly, now has 339 kilowatts at 7,000 RPM, 556 Newton meters, and with a 2018 update, this car got a 10-speed automatic. So it is not a slow car. 0 to 100 in around 4.5 seconds, depending on what surface you're on and who's driving, is not hanging about. And finally, it sounds good too because it has an active exhaust. That active exhaust can be turned off and put into a quiet mode, but I don't know why you'd want to do that because it sounds so good. These four pipes have normal, sport and race on top of the quiet stuff, and all of them sound great. The only real difference at the back of the Australian Mustang compared to the American one is that we have these clear lights, because in the US you can have a brake light that pulses to become the blinker, like on my Ford Galaxy from the 60s, whereas we have to have these clear ones so the outside one can turn orange, which doesn't look as good when they're not turned on, but still looks kind of the same when they are. Inside the boot here, Ford claims 408 litres of space, but that doesn't include the fact that there is a subwoofer sitting in the side here. So it'll be just under 400, but with the soccer balls, we can say it takes 38 of them, which is actually pretty good. There's nothing to grab hold of in the boot here though. It's kind of annoying to close it. And underneath the floor in this car, it only has a tyre inflation kit. So there's a bit of spare space underneath the boot floor as well, if that's what you need. You can also fold both backrests down individually, which almost go flat. Much like the exterior, the interior of the Mustang continues with an element of the past, but brings that into modern times. And that starts with having this sort of dual binnacle arrangement that copies what Mustangs had in the 60s, which was meant to make the symmetry of switching between left and right-hand drive easier. And I suppose that still happens today. Now, the interior of this 2022 Mustang has been really nicely finessed over what was around, certainly in the one that I ran in 2017-18. starting with this trim infill that's on the dash. It's sort of straight in a diagonal fashion. It actually feels like metal this time. It used to be this sort of cloudy, cheap shit silver that just looked terrible. Whereas now it has a real element of sort of retro class about it. Among the other changes in more modern times is obviously the instrument pack. It is now a 12-inch full digital display. It looks really classy. Like, a lot of the numerals are relatively oversized, which does make it sort of seem a little bit junior, but it also matches with all the fonts. They're all the same. They're all easily accessible through these buttons on this steering wheel here. You also have a little pony here for the Mustang My Mode, which lets you accept what you're going to do with the steering, the ESC, the exhaust and the damping. So you can have all four sitting there, and if you don't want to see what the parameters are, you just hit that and then you hit trip computer and it goes back to the normal trip thing. So it's all quite sort of changeable. Once you go into Sport Plus mode, which you can do with these toggles down here, which are carried over from before, you just flick through here, you've got normal, you've got My Mode, you've got Sport Plus, you've got Racetrack, and you've got Drag Strip. So there's quite a lot of things to play around with here. Sport Plus changes the tacho from being circular on the left to a strip that runs up and along the top. And it might sound a bit gaudy, but it actually looks really good. This car has these optional Recaro seats. They also look really good, but I kind of miss the fact that it doesn't have the heating and the cooling that the standard seats have. So you're paying $3,000 more for a much grippier backrest, but you've got switch blanks here now for where the cooling and the heating should be. And they're both three-setting on the normal car. Also, if you're a larger frame person, I reckon you want to stay with the normal seats because these are quite tight on your back. The normal ones do give a lot more room to move, but again, it's got cooling. I'm sold. The rest of the interior has done a nice job of sort of perking that up as well. We've now got exposed stitching around here, matching the printed stitching on these pads on the dash here. We've got an extra little strip down here with more stitching in it. And we've also got a new stereo, which is a B&O Play one, which is the Bang & Olufsen affordable line of stereos. This one has 1,000 watts and 12 speakers, plus an amplifier, plus that subwoofer in the boot. So there's never any doubt that this doesn't have really good sound. It's not absolutely top shelf, but geez, it's good. And it's heaps better than it was before. The Mustang does fall down a little bit when it comes to connectivity. It doesn't have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. They both need a cable. There's a USB plug here, plus a 12-volt outlet there. There's now a little blank where there used to be a badge as far as I can remember. And in here, we have another USB and another 12-volt outlet, but nothing particularly fancy. We've got two quite deep cup holders here, but there's nothing you can really put in the doors. There is a kind of a little drinksy thing here, but I don't know what you could put there. Probably a hip flask. It's definitely better in terms of finish and materials quality than it used to be, and I think it just sort of generally suits the vibe of the car, even though I do miss seeing the big bonnet scoop up front. Sitting in the back here is not the ideal position to be in a Mustang Fastback. It's definitely a 2+2. But for someone who's sort of like a preteen or a kid, I think it's actually pretty good. In terms of legroom, I've squeezed in behind where my seat is here, and I can just fit my feet under the seat. There's kind of knee room if I spread my legs around it, but there's no headroom. If you really want to carry 4 people in a Mustang, just buy the convertible and put the roof down. The combined fuel consumption figure for the Ford Mustang GT Fastback Automatic is 12.7 litres per 100 kilometres. However, we've averaged 14.9 litres per 100 kilometres, or closer to 20 when just driving in the city. The warranty for the Mustang in Australia is 5 years or unlimited kilometres, and the cap price servicing only covers 4 years or 60,000 kilometres, each service capped at $299, meaning $1,196 over 4 years. Over the last 12 months, the median budget direct customer paid $1,085 to comprehensively insure a Ford Mustang. However, everybody's situation is different, and your premium may vary based on things insurers take into account, like your driving history, whether you garage your car, and where you live. The one thing the current Mustang lacked was finesse. It already had the chassis balance, and it already had that muscular feel about it, sitting deep down in this cabin with a relatively high window line, but it just didn't quite bring it all together, particularly the steering. Whereas now this 2018 update, especially this car we have here with optional magnetic dampers, really makes a big difference to the way this car drives. It's never going to have crisp Porsche-like steering. It's just not in the DNA of a Ford Mustang, certainly not yet, but it's so much better than before. I have my mode Mustang thing set up with steering in comfort, dampers in normal, and the exhaust in sport, because why not, really? It sounds bloody great, but you don't need to faff about with that stuff anymore. It's fine when you do a track day, flicking around with these modes, you know, choosing sport mode or racetrack, but you don't need that in the road. This car has enough poise and enough handling ability to be able to handle that. With Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tyres, it's got 255 front, 275 back, and a limited slip diff, plus 380mm brakes with 6-piston Brembo calipers. There's a lot going on in the Mustang GT Fastback to make this a proper driver's car, and for the most part, like really 9 times out of 10, it is. It's just really quite fun in flinging it through corners because it has so much balance and so much grip, yet if you want to boot it and sort of provoke it, it has all that oversteer fun still lurking in the background, which is kind of what a V8 rear driver is about in the first place. Even the 10-speed automatic, certainly driving around town, is really nice because it lets it burble along in a gear, hearing that active exhaust go at the back, and having a gear shift indicator in front of you here. It's using 10th gear more often than you would think, and yet it's quite easy to play around with the paddles and let it stick there and use that mid-range and let it gurgle through. Though I think the 6-speed manual does that better because it won't be quite as fast in acceleration as the 10-speed auto, but it does let you hear that mid-range gurgle that a V8 is really all about. Driving the 10-speed flat out, all it does is just constantly change gears, and I just don't think that's quite as orally satisfying, although it is definitely faster on a stopwatch. The ride of the Mustang with adaptive dampers is firm in normal mode. It doesn't have any concessions to cushiness here. This is actually a sporty coupe and a proper one. And so it's firm, but it doesn't have that jiggly vertical annoyance of the old car or its sort of rear dancing axle. Even though here we have a multi-link independent rear end, we don't have the old live axle of the previous one. And if you thought the pre-facelift of this current Mustang wasn't quite as composed, you should drive an older one because it's kind of like driving an EA Falcon without any suspension tuning. But at least they had character. Now this car has way more ability than I think a lot of people give it credit for, and thank God for that. Even the safety systems in the Mustang are reasonably useful. It has 8 airbags inside. It has lane departure warning and lane keep assist, which stays off when you start and stop the car. It's easily done by the button on the end of this column stalk here. It doesn't have a very good NCAP rating. It's a 3-star NCAP because rear side intrusion on children in booster seats is sort of borderline critical. So we didn't do baby tests today because you probably shouldn't be taking too many kids in the back of this car, but you know what, it's still a lot better than an older Mustang, and as long as you don't get hit, what's to worry about? The exhaust too, I think, is multi-talented. It has 4 modes. We were doing camera work before in quiet mode, so we weren't annoying the neighbours while we were filming in the car, yet you can still hear it outside. It still has a nice gurgle, but it is sort of definitely the just robbed the bank, sneaking away kind of mode. As soon as you go into normal sport or racetrack, you just hear that rear burble amp itself up. And even in the previous model with an optional Ford Performance exhaust, it was nothing like this. It's way better. About the only thing that I really miss in the old Mustang, certainly in this car, is I'd like to have a little bit more kind of bonnet in front of me. You do get used to having sort of a flatter bonnet and a better view, but I do feel like I'm sitting quite high in this Recaro, even though here it seems low, but because I'm used to having that bump in front, you can just see the bonnet going way out ahead rather than feeling sort of like you're in the car. And the Recaros don't have seat heating or seat cooling, so I don't know whether I'd spend $3,000 on them. I'd just stick to the normal one. And I also wouldn't spend $650 on that stripe or the spoiler for $750, but that's all up to you. I think that in terms of minusing those things from the price of this car and then choosing the manual, For $70,000, a Mustang GT V8 Fastback is a lot of machine for the money, and it's lovable. If you like this car, Chasing Cars can help you take the next step. If you'd like to organise a test drive of the new Ford Mustang or download a brochure, click on the link below the video. So often, the death of a coupe comes around due to the fact that the manufacturer doesn't give the car enough attention during its lifespan. But you could never accuse Ford of doing that with a Mustang, because this car constantly gets attention, or at least so it seems. This colour, as I've already mentioned, is not going to be on sale anymore beyond March production in 2022. So there's some around if you still want one, and neither is orange, and that's a bit sad. But you know, it just means there's still a wealth of choice. Coupe, convertible, manual, automatic, 4-cylinder, Mach 1 at the top end, plus you have all that accessorizing. But what underpins the Mustang is the fact that it's actually good, not just a piece of changeable fashion. It is a really good muscle coupe, and all of those changes that happened in 2018, plus the gradual finessing over time, just make this car much better than it was at launch in 2014 or December 2015 in Australia. So it's kind of moving with the times quite well. It's nowhere near a level of electrification. That's probably never going to happen to this because we've got the Mach-E. But that's not what Mustang buyers want. They want a tough car that looks tough, that sounds tough, and that handles really good. And this does all of those things. And that's why I love this big chunk of metal behind me. Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so below the video, and also leave a comment on Chasing Cars. Thanks for watching.